Hello, welcome to the podcast AnonX. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into a topic that's really captivated, intrigued, and honestly mystified people for centuries. We're talking about the Freemasons. You know, from those whispers of ancient origins to how people see their influence today, the name itself just brings up images of like secret handshakes, hidden symbols, shadowy groups.
Yeah, definitely. And our mission today is really to try and cut through some of that noise. We've gone through quite a stack of sources, historical accounts, detailed articles, and pretty deep research trying to pull out the most important bits of knowledge. We want to help you, our listener, understand what seems to be verifiable fact, what's maybe more enduring legend, and, well, why this group keeps sparking so much fascination and, yeah, often intense speculation.
That's exactly right. So over the next few minutes, we're going to try and unpack who the Freemasons really are. We'll explore their symbols, the ones you see around. We'll dig into their surprisingly deep roots and their impact right here in America. And crucially, we need to untangle some of those persistent conspiracy theories that always seem to pop up. Things like global control and how they get mixed up with that other group, the Illuminati. Okay, so let's unpack this. Let's start right at the very beginning. Who are the Freemasons, basically, and what's their origin story? It always seems so shrouded in mystery.
Well, it's interesting because the organization itself, they make a key distinction. They don't like being called a secret society. They prefer, and our sources back this up, a society that holds secrets.
Okay. Subtle difference, but important.
Yeah. And their origins, they trace back, maybe surprisingly, not to some shadowy figures, but really practically, to the medieval stonemasons guilds in Europe. These were, highly skilled craftsmen. They traveled a lot for work. And that movement actually gave them a much broader perspective, a wider worldview than maybe people who just stayed in one village back then.
So actual stone carvers and builders, huh?
Yeah.
That's quite different from the image many people have. How did it, evolve from that?
Exactly. And what's really key here, foundationally, is that the oldest proven Masonic lodge, the one with records we can actually look at, dates back to 1599. That's Mary's Chapel in Edinburgh, Scotland. In fact, the earliest meeting minutes we have found are from January 1599 from Lodge Aitchison's Haven, also in Scotland.
Wow, 1599.
Yeah. So this really suggests a structured movement started there way before the Grand Lodge of England, which people often cite, formed in 1717. And there was this key figure, William Shaw. He was the master of works for King James VI of the Scotland in the late 1500s. He was the one who implemented bylaws, made lodges keep minutes, basically formalized things.
So if we're really tracing it back, Scotland kind of emerges as the true birthplace of modern Freemasonry as we know it. That's a really useful insight for our listeners.
Precisely. And here's where it gets really interesting. As the actual need for stonemasons started to decrease, building techniques changed. These lodges didn't just fade away, they adapted, they evolved, they sort of transitioned into places where people discussed Western philosophical ideas, stuff rooted in the Age of Enlightenment.
Like what kind of ideas?
Well, pretty revolutionary stuff for the time. Anti-monarchist ideas, principles of constitutional government, the whole concept of republics. Their core values shifted towards things like brotherhood and love. And members are traditionally forbidden from discussing religion or politics inside the lodge. The idea is to avoid arguments. Though, importantly, they do have to believe in a supreme being.
Any supreme being.
Yeah, the sources suggest it's intentionally broad to include various faiths. And much like those old guilds, members progress through levels. Entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master mason. It mirrors that old craft hierarchy.
And it feels like that Scottish influence really spread. There's that saying, isn't there? Something like, wherever Scots went in numbers, the fourth thing they built was always a lodge. That really says something about their global reach.
It absolutely does. It highlights just how persistent their presence became. Today, our sources suggest there are over 6 million members worldwide. And a huge chunk of them, about 2/5, so maybe over 2 million, are right here in the United States. Nowadays, Freemasonry mostly operates as a nonprofit, involved in various charities and public benefit things.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit, because this is where I think the popular imagination really kicks in. Beyond the history, it's the secrecy, the rituals.
Yeah.
That's what grabs people, right?
Yeah.
Leads to all the theories. What did you find in the sources about what actually happens inside a lodge? Like when someone joins, does it live up to the drama?
It's a great question because, the requirements for joining are pretty strict, and that adds to the mystique. A candidate has to be a free man. not, indentured or bound. Believe in a supreme being. Again, from any religion. Be over 18, have good character, good ethics, and this is specific, never have been a slave.
That is a very specific set of criteria.
Yeah.
Okay, what about the initiation itself? Is it all blindfolds and ropes like in the movies?
Well, our sources describe it like this. The candidate, they call him a proposed person, wears ordinary clothes. Yeah. One sleeve is rolled up, one pant leg is rolled up, and they are blindfolded. Symbolically, it represents moving from the dark world outside into the light of Freemasonry. And yes, a rope, sometimes called a cable tow, is put around their neck, with the end held by other Masons. They're led between two pillars, symbolic of the pillars before Solomon's temple. Then, at an altar, there's a Freemasonry scripture open, with the square and compass symbols on it, and there, the candidate takes an oath. To believe in the Freemasons' God, live by their principles. And a key part explicitly mentioned in our sources is swearing to keep the secrets of the group with one's life.
Wow.
With one's life. That's intense. It raises a big question, though. For an organization with these traditions, mostly male history, what about women? How did that ever change if it did?
Right, historically totally male only. But there's this fascinating story about Elizabeth Eldworth. Apparently, she accidentally overheard or saw part of a ritual through a gap in a brick wall at her father's house where a lodge met. Because she'd seen the secrets, they actually initiated her. She became the first female member, sort of by accident.
No way. Yeah. And this eventually led to the creation of separate but related Masonic organizations specifically for women, so they could participate in similar principles and fellowship.
Okay, that makes sense. And their symbols, the square and compass, are everywhere, instantly recognizable. But then there are others, like the pyramid and that all-seeing eye, that get tangled up in the bigger conspiracy theories, especially when people talk about the U.S. dollar bill. What's the real story there?
It's a really good point because symbols are powerful and, easily misinterpreted. While symbols like the pyramid and maybe the Eye of Horus do get linked by theorists to both Freemasons and the Illuminati, particularly because they show up on U.S. currency, our sources make a really important clarification. That specific eye symbol on the dollar, the Eye of Providence, it's explicitly stated as not related to the historical Bavarian Illuminati.
Okay, that's clear. Not the Illuminati.
You're right. Its connection to the Freemasons is more of a debated theory. Some sources even link it more directly to Christian symbolism, so the conspiracy stuff often just lumps these symbols and their very different histories together.
It really does feel like Freemasonry has had a huge presence, or at least a perceived influence. In America specifically, what's the story there? Do they really shape the nation like some people claim?
Well, looking broader, some sources definitely suggest that Freemasons were, instrumental behind the American Revolution. Some even think they influenced the actual city plan of Washington, D.C. What we know for sure is the organization set up shop in the U.S. pretty early on. We see records of an English Freemasonry lodge in Boston back in 1733. And then American Freemasonry itself started forming down in Georgia around 1734. They grew fast.
And the list of famous Americans linked to them. It's kind of staggering. Feels like half the history books feature a Mason.
It is pretty striking when you look at the names our sources list. Many U.S. presidents, George Washington, Andrew Jackson, FBR, Harry Truman.
Right. The big names.
Yeah. And beyond presidents, Benjamin Franklin, obviously deeply involved, Mark Twain, Louis Armstrong, the musician, Harry Houdini, the escape artist, even Winston Churchill, Buzz Aldrin, the astronaut, composers like Mozart, Voltaire. The list goes on. It really shows their reach across different fields, politics, arts, science.
Including entertainment figures like Armstrong and Houdini is interesting, too.
It really is. It shows it wasn't just politics or philosophy.
Okay, speaking of presidents and American symbols, back to the $1 bill. It's always Exhibit A for Masonic influence theories. What's the actual detail behind the symbols there?
Right. Well, our sources dig into details that definitely fuel those theories. Franklin D. Roosevelt, who was a Freemason, authorized putting the pyramid and eye symbol on the $1 bill back in 1935. And the original design for that Great Seal, approved way back in 1789, attributed to Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, and John Adams, all Masons.
Okay, so the connection is there historically with the people involved.
Yes. And to understand how the theories really take hold, you have to see how they interpret tiny details. Like, they say the pyramid with the floating capstone means an unfinished mission, Or they count the eagle feathers, 32 wing feathers for the ordinary levels of Scottish Rite Freemasonry, 33 and 34 inner feathers for higher control positions, 9 tail feathers for the Commander's Council.
Wow, that's incredibly specific.
It is. It shows how meticulously these theories can be built, finding meaning in things most people wouldn't even notice. But again, just to reiterate, while these symbols get associated with them, the Eye of Providence itself is explicitly stated in one source as not related to the original Bavarian Illuminati.
Got it. So this really leads us to the big one, the conspiracy theories. When you talk Freemasons, inevitably the Illuminati comes up. Are they linked? Are they the same thing? Let's untangle this.
Yeah, this is crucial because our sources draw a very clear line here. The Illuminati, meaning enlightened ones, was a totally separate secret society, founded May 1st, 1776 in Bavaria, by a law professor, Adam Weishaupt. And its original goal was quite specific: fight superstition, fight the overwhelming power of the church and the monarchy at the time, promote Enlightenment ideas.
Okay, so a real historical group, but different goals, different origins from the Masons.
Exactly. Started tiny, like 5 members, grew to maybe 2,000 or 3,000 before it collapsed. Now, what is interesting and where the confusion starts is that Weishaupt did deliberately infiltrate Freemason lodges.
Oh, okay.
Why? His goal was to recruit wealthy, influential Masons into his own group, the Illuminati. But the Illuminati itself didn't last long. It was banned, suppressed by the Duke of Bavaria, Karl Theodor, around 1784-1785. Weishaupt had to flee, and his documents got discovered. They supposedly exposed plans to overthrow European governments.
And that's where the stories linking them to big events and conspiracies really took off.
That seems to be the fuse. Theories linking the Illuminati and the Freemasons to things like the French Revolution got a huge boost from books by guys like John Robison in 1797 and Abbé Birol in 1798. But here's a really critical point from the sources. The Illuminati you hear about in pop culture today, Jay-Z, the triangle hand signs, the tattoos, that's explicitly unrelated to the historical Bavarian Illuminati.
Right, it's become more of a modern myth or symbol.
Exactly. But despite that historical disconnect, the fear of a new world order, this idea of a single global government run by secret elites that persists. Sources mention that maybe up to 23% of Americans still believe in some version of this Illuminati New World Order conspiracy.
And these theories, they aren't just, harmless fun online. They can have real impacts, can't they? Especially now with how fast stuff spreads.
Absolutely. The late 20th, early 21st century saw this huge boom in conspiracy theories, largely because of the internet. Social media makes them spread like wildfire. And it has led to real things like measles outbreaks linked to anti-vax beliefs fueled by conspiracies. The FBI has even acknowledged that conspiracy theories can actually inspire domestic terrorism. And sometimes it wasn't just abstract ideas. Real events fueled the fear, like that William Morgan affair back in 1826. He was a Mason, threatened to expose secrets, then vanished. Whatever the real story was, that disappearance became this powerful, chilling story that cemented the idea of Freemasonry being secretive and maybe even dangerous. It stuck around for decades. And this leads to some really critical views we found. For instance, the Islamic Jurisprudence Council back in 1978 flat out declared Freemasonry a dangerous organization. Their analysis described it as secretive, fundamentally Jewish and Zionist, with hidden goals known only at the top. They saw it as hostile to all religions, especially Islam, using a kind of deceptive brotherhood to gain influence.
That's a very strong condemnation.
Very. The council argued that Freemasonry targets smart, wealthy, influential people by offering personal benefits. Working to get members into key jobs, maybe using unjust methods. They described the initiation ritual as frightening, meant to intimidate members into obedience. They also claimed Freemasonry has political aims, plays a role in most coups worldwide, and that whistleblowers might meet their end. So their conclusion was stark. Joining Freemasonry meant leaving Islam, basically apostasy. And again, it's vital we state we're just relaying what these sources say, not endorsing the viewpoint itself.
Okay. So as we sort of bring this deep dive towards a close, where does that leave us? Are the Freemasons this global threat, some suggest? Or are they just a misunderstood historical group that's become this magnet for conspiracy theories? It's really clear our sources paint very different pictures.
Yeah, so what have we really unpacked here about them? We've seen them start with, actual stonemasons, grow into this brotherhood that helped shape Enlightenment ideas. We've looked into their rituals, their symbols, traced their undeniable mark on American history, so many famous members, even touching entertainment like Louis Armstrong, Houdini. But tangled up with all that history is this constant shadow of speculation, these complex theories connecting them to the Illuminati, global control, even disappearances like Morgan's. It's a really complex picture.
And it seems like getting a truly definitive answer is part of the problem, right?
Yeah.
Given the secrecy and how biased some sources might be.
Exactly. That historical secrecy, plus the fact that many sources come either from within the group or from dedicated conspiracy theorists, it makes finding truly objective, unbiased conclusions incredibly tough. We've really tried our best here to just present the content from all these different sources as impartially as we could for you.
Right. So as we wrap up this deep dive into the Freemasons, maybe it leaves us and you listening with this thought to ponder. Given how fascinated humans seem to be with secret societies and how easily information and misinformation flies around today, how do you actually tell the difference between a long-running, maybe somewhat private organization and a genuine global conspiracy, something to chew on? Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the Freemasons. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.